Okay, publishing without supervision podcast. Take one. No, I'm your host Erica Conroy, and I'm joined by my beautiful co-host Xavier Granville. Hello, Xavier.
Hello, Erica. Beautiful. Wow, that's a compliment I did not expect.
But it's so true, especially if you're listening to us on the audio. We're both very beautiful authors.
Absolutely. Much better if it's just sound.
Yeah, okay. Moving on, before we totally gross our guest out for today, we are talking today with the lovely, wonderful, and even more beautiful Pippa DaCosta, author of urban fantasy, paranormal romance, and science fiction romance. But today we're actually going to focus on urban fantasy in an urban fantasy series. So welcome, Pippa.
Hi everybody. Yeah, great to be here.
It's great to have you. So, what should we start with, X? Should we go straight into questions, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I guess if we're here to talk about urban fantasy, Pippa, to you, I suppose, what to you is urban fantasy, and what's your take on it? I guess.
Okay, so everyone has a different version of what urban fantasy is to them, but I think there are certain elements that are pretty consistent through the genre. And really, you're looking at magic in a contemporary setting. That's what it boils down to. I mean, you can stretch it into various different things and turn it into urban fantasy romance, or urban fantasy PI, or the darker urban fantasy. So there's a lot you can do with it, but mostly it is magic in a contemporary setting. I think that's what urban fantasy sort of boils down to.
Awesome.
Okay. Do you want to take the next question, Erica?
Yeah, well, I was just about to. So,
Sorry.
you've lightly touched on the specific flavors, shall we say, of urban fantasy, but can you talk about what the readers expect to find in urban fantasy, like the common tropes as that you use?
Yeah, sure. I think it's important not to call them rules as well at this stage, because every author comes in with their own idea. But for urban fantasy, at least what I write, which tends to lean a little bit towards urban fantasy romance, you've got usually a first person point of view. So you've got one character that you're following throughout the whole of the book, usually. There's usually some kind of mystery to be solved, some crime to be solved, or some kind of conflict going on, obviously, that's driving the story forward. And people, I think, really are looking for aspects of adventure. They're looking for, usually fast-paced as well. So you've got a lot of action going on. You've got a lot of action scenes, all sorts of adventures and sort of magical things happening to drive the story forward. But yeah, it tends to be that sort of fast-paced first-person point of view that urban fantasy readers, I think, are really looking for. Something, I mean, you touch on things like Jim Butcher. I expect we'll talk about various different authors. But yeah, you're looking at something that happens, a murder, for example, and then you're starting off with the mystery, and he's solving that as we go through the series and go through the books, book one. So yeah, it's mostly, I think, is that action and drama and kick-ass kind of snarky characters that people are tuning in for with urban fantasy, definitely.
Do you think there's a difference if it's a male point of view character or if it's a female point of view character? Are there certain expectations there between the genders?
Yeah, I think there are, actually. Yeah, I mean, we've got this sort of split at the moment between I don't really want to call it urban fantasy romance, but I think that's what traditional publishers would call it, where you've got the female main character, usually some kind of love interest going on in the background as well, perhaps a subplot of love interest. And a lot of female readers are looking for that in their urban fantasy. But you also got the male-orientated urban fantasy as well, which tends to be, well, I certainly put a love story in mine. I mean, I write male-orientated urban fantasy as well, and there's definitely a love story subplot going on in there, because I need that as a reader. I'm interested in that. But it definitely has a different flavour to it. I think you're sort of looking at perhaps more action-based, something a little bit more gritty. But I mean, it's still pretty close, and we're splitting hairs really. But there are subtle differences between the two. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, having read the first book in your Soul Eater series, I can definitely see what you mean in that. You definitely do have the romance elements in there, but I think, yeah, when you're going with the male protagonist, you almost can't really, I guess, pillow up the romantic side of it. It has to be. It can be there and it can be present, but you can't kind of dress it up in a way that it seems romantic. It almost has to be in that hot under the collar type of a way, but it can't be romance.
Yeah. I think male readers are looking for something different. They're not looking for urban fantasy romance. They're looking for urban fantasy action, or they're looking for urban fantasy sort of PI guy, the kick-ass guy that's getting stuff done. So yeah, they're looking for something slightly different to perhaps what the female reader is looking for, which is a much more emotional arc of the main character, I think. And certainly, I mean, basically, I base my books on what I love to read, and I really enjoy something with a little bit of a heat level in it. Some sort of emotional connection, some sort of love story going on, so I think, yeah, I tend to kind of write what I love to read, so that tends to just all go into my books anyway. But with my Soul Eater series with Ace Dante, it was slightly different, because yeah, male character, still got my love story in there, but it's a little bit probably just further towards the sort of subplot, a little bit in the background. There's a lot more other stuff going on in there as well.
Well, and like you were saying before, sorry to cut you off, Erica. I like what you said was, you like to keep the romantic angle in there, because, in my opinion, if you don't, if you kind of leave that as these people are that, especially in the grim detective model, where it just seems like this guy is completely asexual, doesn't care about anyone, and screw this. If you completely go that route, this person becomes more of an archetype and not so much of an actual flesh and blood character. Human weakness is real, and and attraction is real. So if you're going to be forcing these characters to be in situations and they are attractive and around attractive people, something might happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's unrealistic to have a character that kind of goes from A to B and he's completely focused on the mission at hand. There's going to be down moments. There's going to be moments when he's thinking about other things. And it's not all about solving that case. There's other stuff going on. There's backstory going on. Other things drive him. They have to, otherwise he becomes a cardboard cutout, like you've mentioned.
Yeah, I was just going to say, X might have read the Soul Eater series, but I've been reading the first book of the Veil series.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, we decided to take one of each just to see how
Sure.
different things were. And from what I'm hearing and what you've already said, the Veil one seems to be much more of the thrust of it, seems to be the romance plot that is driving things along. And you've made it so that it is the central conflict as well.
Yeah, I think when I started out, I did pretty much everything wrong. I came from, I didn't know what I was doing with indie publishing. I kind of just wrote what I love to read, and I had no idea about target market, and I had no idea about marketing. I did everything wrong initially, but I think what I did do, I came to the genre with a love for the genre, and I've adored urban fantasy since before it was even a genre. It's always been my love. And I think I came and I wrote Beyond the Veil. It was my first foray into self-publishing. And I wrote it because I wanted to sort of emulate everything that I enjoyed in urban fantasy, but I also wanted to put a little bit of a twist on it as well. And that for that particular book and for that series, actually, it's slightly darker than, or it goes slightly darker. You probably haven't got that far yet, but it goes slightly darker than some of the other urban fantasies out there. So that was my sort of, yep, I love this genre and I'm going to put romance in there, but I'm going to twist it. And I'm going to sort of shake things up a bit, and that's kind of how it goes throughout the series. The characters change slightly, and the good guy is perhaps not as good as you think he's going to be, and and that was kind of my unique spin on it. But yeah, definitely a romantic element, quite a strong one throughout that series.
Oh, okay. So I was just wondering, has it been well received by the readers, though? You said you didn't, do your target market analysis or anything like that. There have to be other people out there who like reading just what you like reading.
Oh yeah, totally. I think although I didn't at the time target the market specifically, I didn't sit down and I didn't study the genre, I think I kind of accidentally fell into, well, this is urban fantasy and I love it and this is what I'm going to write. And it wasn't till later on that I thought, do you know what, this is selling, and I need to dissect why it's selling. And take it a step further. And I kind of, I sort of came at it, I sort of fell into it by accident, and then later on thought, actually, there's a lot of potential here. I mean, we're going back like 3 years now, so it's quite a while ago. But yeah, so
what about it was working? You picked it apart and found why people liked it. So what exactly about it?
What exactly did people like about it? I think I hate to say love triangle because everyone's like, oh my god, I hate love triangles, oh, don't make me read it. But I did deliberately go in there with a love triangle because I wanted to get people talking. And that's exactly what I have done. They all complain, oh, it's it's love triangle, but it's slightly different. But yeah, that was a deliberate thing. So they do, I think a lot of them say they don't like it, but then they're like, oh, I got to read the next one. I've got to find out what happens, and they're emotionally invested in it. And yeah, okay, so we all say that we hate love triangles, but secretly, I think we kind of like them. Yeah. And the other thing that I was conscious of was putting in the dreaded cliffhanger as well. And that was basically emulating sort of a TV series where you've got the arc of each series. So I've got an arc in each book. Each book has its own plot, but at the same time, I finish it off with a moment where things turn on their heads, and they think, and the reader was in a position where they think, oh crap, I have to read the next one. And again, it's a case of readers will call you out and like, oh, it's a cliffhanger, and I hate cliffhangers, but you know what? I'm going to read the next book. So yeah, that was a kind of a deliberate thing that I came in and thought, I'm going to do these things, but are they going to be well received? And I think, it's worked. It has worked well. Yeah, I get complaints, but I also get readers that just devour the whole series and absolutely adore it. So yeah, I'm cool with that. That's okay.
Whatever it takes to get them to come back, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you can, as authors, there are things that you can use to make sure that you're bringing readers back every time, and that emotional connection is one thing that I use with my romance or my romance subplots. But I also, I'll use a cliffhanger, but I'll use it as a hint of what's going to happen next. I'm not going to chop it off in the middle of the story. That's not the cliffhangers that I do. I finish my story arc and then I continue on. So I think
that's probably the best way to do it, because you've not left them hanging about what they've just been reading about. You've really teased them about the next problem that they're going to be encountering.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, having read that Hidden Blade, the first in the that one series there, I definitely can testify that you have a good sense of that cliffhanger ending. But I wouldn't even call it cliffhanger, because a lot of people use that term a little too loosely, and a satisfying ending doesn't have to be a happy ending. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. My readers would totally agree with that. Yeah, I love urban fantasy as well, because I can play about with perhaps not so happy ending. I'm not writing romance. So there doesn't have to be a happy ever after. And I love that, because it means that the reader is kind of not wondering, you know, well, actually, how are these characters going to get out of this situation? Are they going to get out of this situation? And I really love that about urban fantasy, because it doesn't have to necessarily tie everything up and everybody's happy at the end. There's, well, especially perhaps with my urban fantasy, they tend to be a little bit darker, and, you know, and what is going to happen. So yeah, totally.
And what's nice about kind of pulling that thing is it does, like you said, end up coming into that television feel about things where, you know, a lot of TV show seasons end on like the diner scene or something like that, where it'll just be people talking about, oh, well, that was such a thing. And then it'll do that long camera shot of it pulling out and then, you know, dipping into the music and stuff like that. But what's always interesting is, or what people really remember, is when they do that quick cut to another character that no one's seen since earlier on in the season. What have they been up to?
I love that.
And that's not a cliffhanger. That is just, like you said, fodder for reasons to come back for more.
Yeah.
With that in mind, so you kind of, like you said, you had these main trope ideas. How did you take that and then throw these individual worlds and pantheons at you? Where do you start with the world building with this stuff when you already have such clear ideas of where you want to take the reader? Sure.
Well, I'm a complete pantser, so I tend to just throw everything at the book at the first draft and see where it takes me. I know the Veil series started from the one scene, which Erica has probably read, which is where an assassin walks into our main character's workshop and basically blows it to bits in the first chapter. And the entire series stemmed from that initial conflict between the two characters, and the fact that there's so much going on in that sort of just opening chapter. And literally world building before I wrote that scene, I had nothing. I literally kind of thought, you know, I'm going to write this scene. It's in my head, and I was supposed to be writing something else at the time. And I just could not get this idea out of my head. This guy literally sort of walking into our main character's workshop and blowing her life to bits. And yeah, I just ditched what I was writing at the time and thought, nope, it obviously needs to be written. Started writing it, and do you know what? I probably didn't stop for 6 weeks, first draft, and just the whole thing just happened. So in terms of world building, it just grew as I wrote the first draft, which is probably not the right thing to say, but that's how it happened. It's a little bit easier with urban fantasy, I think, because you're already dealing with a contemporary setting. So you've already got the rules of real life in there. And then in terms of the Veil series, we're talking about half demons, and later on we bring in more demons from across the Veil. And that just, again, that kind of grew organically. I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to do vampires. I didn't want to do werewolves. I wanted to come at this from a completely different angle. You know, urban fantasy is kind of full of vampires and werewolves. So again, I knew that I wanted to approach it differently. But all I had with this conflict, this one scene, yeah, and it kind of just thought, well, hey, let's do something else. Let's make them demons instead of vampires. And it just kind of, it grew with me. It grows organically as I write. And, you know, to be honest, most of the characters have all the great ideas. I'm just kind of there writing down what happens.
What about with the Soul Eater series? Because it's got the Egyptian mythos in there. How did you decide to go that way?
I've always been interested in Egyptian, you know, that kind of history. That's something I've just adored for a very, very long time. And it just occurred to me one day that I thought, well, there's just nothing out there. Nobody really touches on Egyptian gods. And why is that? Just, you know, why do they not do that already? So I wanted to combine my love of Egyptian myth and legend, and just use it in the series that, you know, that I wanted to write. And it was just literally a case of me thinking, no, it's different. I'm going to do it. I know a bit about it. Let's just throw it into the pot and see how it goes, you know.
Do you feel like some pantheons or I guess certain world religions are more represented than others in literary, and like be it like Percy Jackson focusing on Greek, blah blah blah, and do you find that is that one particular reason why you thought that Egypt stuck out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I guess if you're looking at urban fantasy, I mean, at least the stuff I've read, it tends to be pretty straightforward. I guess mostly sort of Western mythos going on. We don't tend to get that more exotic myths and legends from varying countries. It definitely tends to be more Western. I think it is probably a genre that's ripe for someone to come in and just, you know, toss all sorts of extreme different things in there.
Yeah, that's my thought too. It seems that there's a lot of focus on kind of like the north of the Mediterranean world religions, you know, be it Greek, Roman, Celtic. But as far as anything east of the Mediterranean, you know, incorporating anything from Asia or anything from the North American, Native American religions, it's not as represented. But then when you look at like a book like American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and he's just trying to put everything into one, it can be almost a little too robust, because when then you don't even catch the hint of who was that god that guy was even talking to. Yeah.
I must be the only person in the world that didn't really get on with that book. I have to admit, there was just too much. It was they're like exactly like you say. There was just a mass of gods. And it didn't really have room to breathe. But hey, that's just me. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
And I find that that's just one thing that there's a lot of misrepresentation, but at the same time, if you try to bite off too much, then it's going to slow you down.
Yeah. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, we've all got to write stuff that we have an interest in, or stuff. I mean, I literally did Egyptian because I adore it. But, you know, it's a case that I can write quite confidently about it. Whereas we'd have to, as authors, we'd have to, you know, bury ourselves in research if we're going to sort of attempt to do something that we're not familiar with. And that probably makes it a little bit more difficult.
Sure.
Okay, so write what you know in this instance.
Yeah,
exactly. Did as far as the Soul Eater series with that the Egyptian pantheon, since you're so interested in that one, do you find it easy to be able to kind of immerse your characters in that way, because you have such strong archetypes like Amun-Ra and Bastet and all these other ones that you've already incorporated? Is it more about like the looking through the research as far as all the vast wealth of characters that you can draw from that creates the characters, or are you trying to, you know, take your own characters and find the god that best suits it?
No, a bit of both, actually. I think obviously I do research, and I think a lot of their backstory comes from the gods and the mythos. I definitely use that and sort of develop that initially from a sort of a kernel, if you like, and it sort of grows as I bring them into the story and they develop their own personalities. So yeah, it's a bit of both, I think. You know, I kind of make them what I want them to be, but I'm also borrowing from legends that already exist. I mean, I've ended up buying, my accountant probably wondered what on earth I was doing. I was buying Egyptian spells and all sorts of things that all end up in little kernels that end up in the stories, you know. So yeah, I definitely borrow from the existing legends and sort of put my own unique twist on it. I mean, we're dealing with gods in New York, so it's going to be slightly different anyway. But yeah.
So the main characters in each series that you have, do you ascribe to start with the typical tropes that's expected, or how do you create those main characters basically?
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about the tropes because, I mean, my main character, Muse, from the Veil series, she's really, I mean, I had a comment from Kirkus reviews, who said that she was like a Jessica Jones of the urban fantasy, and they're right, actually, because she's not the normal kind of happy-go-lucky kind of kick-ass snarky girl. She's half demon for a start, and you probably haven't got to that in the first book yet, but she grew up in what we would call hell. So she's really got a darker streak in her that comes out as the series progresses. So she's not the normal kind of tropey snarky lead. She is a little bit different, and I think actually I probably bring that to all of my series, the Soul Eater series as well. Ace Dante, the main character, he has some issues. He's definitely got a checkered past. I like to tread the lines between villains and the good guys, villains and heroes. I play with that a lot in my books. So the tropes, I'm slightly, I kind of play with that a little bit. You know, I bring in what readers expect, and then I tend to sort of throw it on its head a little bit, which is probably not the right thing to do if you're writing to market and you want to make $1 bajillion, but you got to enjoy what you're doing, and that's what I get, excited about. So I just think, well, sod it, let's just do it.
Awesome. Sorry. So in the Veil, you've got the love triangle. Did you purposely set out to make Akil the typical rich alpha billionaire character, or Stefan as the rebellious, cocky kind of, but not really boyfriend, but
they're very opposite. I did. I deliberately did that. Akil is in the first book, he's the archetypal bad guy. He is, like you say, rich billionaire, property mogul, and he's the demon. So it's like, well, of course he's the demon because he's the guy in the suit. So that makes perfect sense. But what I do, spoilers. But what I do is, this series progresses, I twist all of that on its head, and I don't know whether you want me to tell you or not, but it's not as it seems. I deliberately set out with two guys who were very different, and switched their roles around, because it's fun and I enjoy doing it, so I get a lot of feedback from readers that are like, oh my god, what just happened, what am I reading here, what is going on? And it is a real emotional arc. It's brilliant, really, the feedback that I get. It's I think it's definitely hit a nerve with readers, because it is different. He's not, Akil is not the bad guy, and Stefan is not the good guy. It doesn't quite work like that.
And likewise, I like what you did with the I think my favorite character in the first book in the Soul Eater series was the receptionist, Shukra. I really like that idea, specifically because when you usually do incorporate that private eye type of thing, there's usually the receptionist, and that's one of like the main foils as far as the character goes. And I loved that when I was writing my detective sci-fi novel. But what I liked about yours is that you specifically took that trope and made it so that these two people hate each other completely, illicitly, but they have to work together because of world building. I like that idea, and like you said, taking those specific tropes and turning them on their head. What if the rude receptionist actually went that much further and would kill her employee if she could?
It's a fantastic series to write. I mean, I'm 3 books in now, and I can't wait to get back to it. I start it again in early next year, because the two main characters, or Ace and his partner Shu, like you say, they hate each other, and they're bound, they're cursed to work together, so they're stuck with each other. And it's just so much fun to write. Oh my god, the two of them, it's a riot. It really is. And they basically write themselves, because they hate each other so much, and the dialogue is just like You know,
Yeah.
they just do it themselves. It's just a lot of fun, a lot of chaos and a lot of mayhem. And Shuka has the most amazing curses and put downs of Ace. It's fantastic. All to do is, you know, male genitalia and all sorts of mutilations and curses, and oh, she's fantastic. I love her to bits.
I think I need to read this book.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd like it, Erica. But what I was getting was that's a lot of other authors would kind of waste that opportunity. You know, that's a trope that, you know, otherwise kind of goes in the background, where it's just like, yeah, absolutely, there's the hot receptionist, and you know, and no one ever kind of bats an eye about it, in the same sense that, oh, it's just a love triangle and no one bats an eye up. It's the execution. It's how you want to take that and change it and make it work for how you want it, and how make it new for the audience as well.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of new authors perhaps go wrong, if they're coming into the genre and they're sort of ticking boxes and think, yep, love interest, yep, you know, sexy receptionist, yep, you know, whatever. They don't make it their own. And I think what you have to do is look at the tropes, make sure that they're in there, because yes, readers are reading urban fantasy because they're looking for these things, but also make it your own. Don't just stick with the same carbon copies and, you know, go with the same vampires, werewolves, and, you know, just throw your own funk on it. Make it your own. Make it different. You have to. There's so much urban fantasy out there that you've got to make it different some way.
At least Jim Butcher, as an example, made different varieties of vampires. You've got the last vampires, the really creepy, ugly vampires. It's like he's almost satisfying everyone's idea of a vampire. I mean, there's no sparkly ones, but you get the point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you know, pick up some of the old role-playing Vampire the Masquerade games. That's exactly what they did there. They got 13 clans just so that way just so everyone's satisfied.
Damn, 13.
But yeah, that's just what, you know, like, if you can take something as simple as just the vampire and divide it up into that many different tropes. You got the ones that are hiding up in the tower and just being all posh and whatever, and then on the full other end of the spectrum, you got the ones that are just turning into wolves and bats and the stuff from that kind of Dracula era of mythos. You know, it's up to you. The source material is vast. It's up to you how you want to interpret it.
Well, is there any advice? Well, I think I might have mentioned that X here is really interested in getting started in urban fantasy. So is there any advice you would give X in particular for his writing?
What do I do?
Yeah, where do I start? I think I kind of touched on it a minute ago, and basically saying, you know, make sure that you're appealing to what readers are looking for in the genre. So your action, potentially a love interest, some kind of something in there, heat level in there, to appeal to as a wider audience as possible, so you get your female and your male readers both interested in the series. I would suggest writing from first person, only because, I mean, that's what I enjoy, but it does tend to be urban fantasy. It does tend to be written in a first person. So yeah, you can do what you want, but at the end of the day, I guess be aware of what readers are looking for and try and stay within those boundaries as much as you can, but at the same time make your own story in there and sort of put your own twist on it, your own author voice, whatever you want to do with it. Just do something that's different to the usual sort of, you know, carbon copies out there.
Awesome. Was that helpful at all, X?
Yep, it's helpful for me, so hopefully it's also helpful to anyone listening.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Pippa, for taking the time to come and talk to us and answer all of our, well, they were pretty painless questions, I'm sure.
They were pretty painless. Yeah, I've had worse questions than that. Don't start now, though. That's fine.
No. So where can people find you on the internet, Pippa?
Okay, you can find me on my website, PippaDaCosta.com. You can find me on Twitter. I'm always on there chatting about random stuff, at Pippa DaCosta. And you can find me on Facebook. And then you can buy my books wherever you want to buy my books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
Awesome. That's excellent. And you can find X and myself on pwspodcast.com as soon as the website goes up and live, which it will be by the time this airs. So ignore what I just said. Thank you all for listening. And what do you want to say to the people listening, X, as we leave?
Oh, good night and good morning and good afternoon and goodbye.
Thank you.